Hey you guys, welcome back to my channel. I hope you guys are having a wonderful day. In today's video, I'll be going over some exponent practices and some exponential rules. So without any more talking, let's just get started. Okay, so we're going to start off with some exponential rule practices. And so for number one, we have 3u to the fifth power divided by 2 parentheses u to the fifth being raised to the fifth power. So basically only the u to the fifth is being raised to the power, so you put into parentheses so you don't confuse yourself and think the 2 is being raised as well, because your answer will be wrong. So now you distribute the fifth power into the parentheses and you end up with 2 to the 25th. I mean u to the 25th power, because when you raise exponents you multiply it. Okay, so now you want to simplify it and break it down to the simplest form that you can. So 3 divided by 2 can't simplify. You just leave that as a fraction. And then when you divide the u to the fifth power divided by u to the 25th, you subtract, because for exponents, when you're dividing, you have to subtract. Don't divide, subtract, and leave it where it's greater. Okay, so number 2 is just a little bit different from number 1, because in this case, all of the numerator is being raised to the third power instead of just a variable, so basically just the m. Now 5 is also being raised to the third power divided by 5m to the ninth power. So what you want to do is distribute your 3 into the parentheses, or the third power rather. And so when you distribute that, you end up with 5 to the third power being multiplied by m squared times 3. And when your exponent is raised to the power, you multiply it, multiply, divided by m to, divided by 5m to the ninth power. And so when you distribute, or when you raise this to the power, you should end up with 125m to the sixth power divided by 5m to the ninth. I made a mistake. I'm sorry. I don't know why I put 25, but it's 125, because 5 times 5 times 5 is 125. So when you divide that, you should end up with 25 with the numbers, because 125 divided by 5 is 25. And then with the variables, you end up with m to the third on the bottom, because 9 minus 6 is 3, and obviously it's bigger on the bottom, so you leave it on the bottom. So your answer should be 25 divided by m to the third power. And in this clip is where I finally realized that I was wrong and it was actually 25. So yeah. Now I just fixed my mistake, and this is how it should have actually looked. And yeah, that's the answer. 25 divided by m to the third. You can't simplify anymore, so that's it. Okay, so number 3 is basically just like number 2, so I figured I would just talk you guys through it. So you have 2r to the 4th power being raised to the second power divided by 6r to the 10th. Mind you, the second power applies to everything inside the parentheses, so that's what you do. You distribute your second power into the parentheses, so now you end up with 2 squared r to the 4th times 2 divided by 6r to the 10th. 2 squared is 4, r to the 4th by 2, you multiply, it gives you r to the 8th divided by 6r to the 10th. So now you want to simplify your numbers and your variables, because you can. So you divide, so your 4, 6, you break that down to 2/3, because you can divide by 2 on both the top and bottom. So for your variables, don't forget when you divide, you subtract. So 10 minus 8 is 2. It's bigger on the bottom, so you leave it on the bottom. So your answer is 2 divided by 3r to the second power. So 2 divided by 3r squared. That's your answer. Okay, so now we're going to shy away from exponential rules. It's just a little bit and move into negative exponents. So you could think of it in a way like you could have a negative friend, but nobody likes negative people around them all the time. So you want more optimistic and more positive friends. So in this case, just think of it in that kind of way, and you just don't want to have negative friends around. So same way you don't want to have negative exponents. So if you want to get rid of negative exponent, all you have to do is move it around. So if it's on the bottom in this case, you move it to the top. If it's on the top, you move it to the bottom. So basically this is 1 being divided by y to the negative 4. It's an imaginary one. There's always a 1, because the same thing divided by 1 is itself. So when I move it to the top, it's y to the 4th divided by 1. So just basically y to the 4th. So now we have x being multiplied by y to the 4th divided by x squared and y to the 4th. So now you can cancel out So 2 minus 1 is 1 and it's greater on the bottom, so you leave the x on the bottom. Y to the fourth being divided by y to the fourth is 0, or 1 rather, because, well, 0, because 4 minus 4 is 0. Well, either way, y is out. So now you end up with 1 divided by x, because that's all that was left. Okay, so for the next two problems, I did not walk y'all through how I solved this, so I'm just going to talk you guys through. So we have x to the 6 being divided by x being multiplied by y to the negative fifth being multiplied by y to the third. So we have a negative on the bottom, so what you want to do is just move it to the top. So just move y to the fifth to the top. So now you end up with x to the 6 being multiplied by y to the fifth divided by x being multiplied by y to the third. So you want to cancel out. So 6 minus 1, so I'm talking about the x's right now. 6 minus 1 is 5. Leave it at the top because it's bigger than the top. Y to the fifth being divided by y to the third. 5 minus 3 is 2. So y to the second, and you leave it on top because 5 is greater. And your answer is x to the fifth power being multiplied by y to the second. Please do not freak out when you see multiple negative exponents. It's not difficult. It's basically just the same thing, honestly. So we have x to the negative 6 and y to the negative 1. All you have to do is move it to the bottom, because if it's negative on the top, it's going to be positive on the bottom. So off to the side, I have a little note in the little squiggly box to kind of help you guys if you need help moving it around, or if you get confused, just kind of write it out, visualize it, and it will help you. So now when you move the x to the 6 and the y to the bottom, when you multiply the x's, you end up with x to the 8th, because when you multiply, you add. But here's the T. When you raise an exponential power, you have to multiply. And when you divide it, you have to subtract. So when you do all that, follow those rules, you end up with 1 being divided by x to the 8th power. Okay, so this is kind of like a little part 2 to like negative exponents. It's not going to be more difficult. It's just going to be like a different approach and a different like point of view on like how they could also throw in negative exponents into problems. So yeah, so for number 1, we have negative 4. Oh, we have to put in parentheses, negative 4x, and everything's being raised to negative 1. And so don't forget, when it's being raised to the power, you distribute and you multiply, for exponents at least. So when you distribute, you end up with negative 4, put in parentheses so you don't confuse yourself. Negative 4 being raised to the negative 1 power, and then you end up with x to the negative 1 power. Mind you, just because it's a negative 4 doesn't mean it's a negative exponent. If it's not being raised to a negative exponent, it's not a negative exponent. That didn't make any sense, but I hope you guys understand what I'm trying to say. So you move it to the bottom because it's all being divided by 1. Don't forget that there's always an imaginary 1. So you move it to the bottom. So it's going to be 1 being divided by negative 4x. Literally, that's it. It's still going to be a negative 4 because the number doesn't change just because there's an exponent. So you end up with 1 divided by 4x. And you move the x, and it's just a 1, so there's an exponent. Number 2 is just a tad bit different because only the x is being raised to the negative 2 power. So you don't move the 5, just x. So negative on top, move to the bottom, it comes a positive. Your answer is 5 over x squared. And that's all you can do. You can't simplify anything. Literally, that's it. Just move the x squared. And don't forget there's always an imaginary 1, so you can just move it to the bottom of it. Okay, I cannot even lie. Number 3 looks so similar to number 1, but we're going to go through it anyways. So we have negative 2x to the negative 2nd power. And your problem is with the x to the negative 2 power because it's a negative exponent. Mind you, don't say negative 2 is also a negative exponent. Just because it's a negative 2 does not mean it's being raised to a negative exponent. It literally has no exponent but 1, and that is positive. So what you want to do is move x to the bottom because it's the negative, and that's it. That's your answer. I talk way too fast. Your answer is actually negative 2 divided by x squared. I just want to say thank you for watching the video to the very end. I really do appreciate it, and I hope you guys found this video helpful. I hope you learned a thing or two. Feel free to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Don't forget to turn on post notifications so you don't miss out on another upload. I hope to see you guys in the next one. Bye, guys.